You know, there are times when you could think we have very funny ways of spending our money in this country. Yesterday, you and I and every other taxpayer handed over €700 million to financial speculators. And remember, this was an unsecured bond, which even Anglo was not bound to honour, never mind the Irish taxpayer. But on the same day, the HSE announced it doesn't have the money to maintain services at Abbeyleix Community Nursing Unit. Now, this is a home, and a home in every sense of the word, to 28 people. Patients, residents, call them what you will, but ultimately people. And you will read also in the papers today that our state, which is genuinely strapped for cash, nobody denies that, has to cut back on services like this, but can still afford to fund cosmetic surgery for convicted criminals. Now, I'd like your thoughts on all of that in a moment, but it echoes of Loughlow House in Athlone, which closed last year in very similar circumstances and with perhaps dubious reasons as well. Also today, if you're going to have a car crash, ploughing into a Garda station is certainly one way to get noticed. Loads of images of Tullamore Garda station are floating around Facebook after last night's collision, which thankfully led to no serious injuries. Also, how you can turn a good business idea into a €10,000 investment. You'll hear about the latest developments to appoint a new Offaly football boss, plus on Rewind and Review, with thanks to Wines Direct. You'll hear all about Ides of March and Contagion. 0818 300 103 is our telephone number. You can text 083 30 10 103. Or you can follow us on Facebook as well. And good morning. I hope you will get involved with the programme between now and 12. We'll begin with the Health Service Executive's announcement that it is to close Abbeyleix Community Nursing Unit on a phased basis. Staff and residents were informed of the decision yesterday, which seems to be based on falling staff numbers and reduced budgets for all HSE services. Joe Ruan, the area manager with the HSE, has committed to being interviewed later this morning. But first, I would like you to meet Brian Marr from the Abbeyleix Business Community Forum. Brian, you're very welcome to the programme.
Good morning, Will.
Can you tell us about your family connections with this unit?
Well, I mean, personally, my mother worked in Abbeyleix Hospital back in the late 50s and right the way through to when she died in the early 80s. So, it was always at the centre of the community, and for our family it was, not just an employer, but it had a very central function in terms of bringing people together. My father died there also in the early noughties, so about 10 years ago my dad died there. And they ironically had met in Abbeyleix Hospital while my father was reading the meter and met my mother, and that's a long time ago.
Okay, that sounds like a story in its own right.
It is indeed. But, I think we're stunned and shocked as a community. I think that it can't be underestimated the impact that this will have, because obviously the HSE can make a decision like this in order to save costs. But it's not just the direct staff, because obviously they said they'll redeploy those staff. So I presume they'll be burning wheels getting to and from wherever their new place of work are. But the supply chain, there's a huge number of other impacts. I mean, there's the Meals on Wheels here in the town. The meals are cooked in the hospital. What's going to happen there? There's a mortuary, which unfortunately most of us end up in at the end of the day. But again, it's a part of the community, and it's something that I presume will be impacted by this. The supply chain to businesses, huge number of local businesses and suppliers would be involved with, supplying to the hospital. Not to mention local shops and smaller businesses who would have had a lot of visiting people coming to see members of family and so on. So it's in similar. It's not Intel, but in scale to Abbeyleix, it's similar.
So, as the news filtered around the town yesterday, what was the reaction?
Oh, just absolute abhorrence. I mean, I think people are just stunned to think that we've had it down the years. We've had the threat, the sword hanging over us that it would close. And it's been, to be fair, a lot of our local politicians have been involved in this over the years and trying to maintain the presence of the facility. So, it has been in recent years. It's had the daycare centre added to it. So there's been an awful lot of money spent by the HSE and the Department of Health previously on the facility. So, it's built up to the point where the 63 permanent members of staff, you've got the 28 long-stay patients, you've got the 8 respite beds, and then you've got a daycare unit which they say they're going to maintain. But I suppose there's a cynicism that, this is creeping and that ultimately the whole of the facility would shut.
Well, this bears a lot of resemblance to the closure of Lochlow House in Athlone about a year ago, and the reaction there was very much one of opposition. People got out in their numbers and they marched. And I know it's not for you to predict, Brian, but based on your knowledge of the area and how people feel about this facility, can you envisage a similar reaction in Abbeyleix?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the news is just sinking in at this point, but there is clearly a case for the Minister himself, Dr. Riley, and his henchmen in the HSE to be called to account. We're going to be looking for a public meeting, and we don't want faceless cronies at that. We want the key decision makers. The problem with these organisations is they can make those decisions at the stroke of a pen in Dublin, and the impacts are never really considered. So yes, we will be motivated. There will be mobilisation in the next few days, and I think there will be a committee put together for people to, put their case forward, and then we would look to convene a public meeting shortly, as soon as, really. So I know that our elected reps will be trying desperately to get hold of the officials in the department at this stage. So once we have names, we should be able to put together something for that.
Brian Marr from the Abbeyleix Business Community Forum, thank you very much for taking our call this morning.
Thank you, Will.
Now, just a little bit of background. There was a HIQA inspection at the facility in February of this year. It did bring up a number of issues, mainly relating to the ratio of staff to patients. But the HSE in the Leinster Express, published on the 5th of October, is quoted as saying that those issues were addressed and there is no HIQA report outstanding in relation to the Abbeyleix Community Nursing Unit. And a spokesperson added there is adequate staffing in place to provide a good quality service for residents. And within the space of a month, all of that seems to have changed. Sean Fleming is the local Fianna Fáil TD. Deputy Fleming, you're welcome to the programme. Now, you're condemning Dr. James Riley, the Minister for Health, for this decision, but what is it you expect him to do?
Well, I didn't expect him to make this decision. That's the first issue. And in fairness, the new Minister for Health has said he will decide all key issues in relation to health, and he was very good in relation to Portlaoise Hospital during the summer, making it abundantly clear that he personally would ensure all the non-consultant hospital doctors that were required for Portlaoise would be provided, and he said he would be taking a hands-on approach. And this decision has been okayed and approved by the Minister for Health. It's not just faceless HSE people. Obviously they put it on his desk, but he has taken a hands-on approach. I've asked the County Corla to allow me raise this in the Dáil during the course of today. Whether the County Corla allows me to do that, I don't know, but my request is in since last night. But that all aside, it's really shocking news for Abbeyleix, and Brian Marr explained it well, and I know you will have other people whose families are involved in the hospital on today. And really, apart from all of that, there is no economic sense in this, and there's just two little figures I want to give the public to understand, and I hope you put these to Joe Rowan when he comes on today. The payroll bill in Abbeyleix today, and I spoke to Joe Rowan yesterday afternoon, is 2.6 million per annum. And that is not going to change as a result of this closure, because staff will be redeployed and continue to be paid in other locations, whether it's Portlaoise or wherever. And the HSE is going to take on a new cost to pay for all these residents in private nursing homes by and large, which approximately is €1,000 per week, which is €30,000 approximately for the patients who are there, which is a new bill for the HSE of 1.5 million that they're taking on by way of payments to private nursing homes in the area. Stradbally, Port Arlington, Ballaragget, and some of these areas are already being mentioned. and he's saying that he will save his agency nurses costs next year as a result of this. I can't see how taking on a new cost of $1.5 million per annum to pay for private nursing care in private nursing homes, while at the same time there'll be no staff savings, and because there'll be no staff reductions under the Croke Park deal. It makes no sense.
Okay, so you contend that the economic argument doesn't stand up. But I want to, because we haven't interviewed Joe Rowan yet, he has agreed to come on to the programme at 11 o'clock this morning. But in the statement we received from the HSE, they talk about the reduced financial allocation and continued reductions in staff numbers, brought about in part by the moratorium on recruitment, which was a Fianna Fáil initiative, was it not?
Yeah, well, the recruitment moratorium is there. Nurses can be brought in certain cases where they decide to allocate other posts who are returning to fill those vacancies, but I know the HSE has a difficulty. But the point is, they are not actually reducing any staff numbers here. There's no staff numbers being reduced in Abbeyleix, they're just being transferred elsewhere. And really the only issue is they're taking on a new cost of paying for these people in a private
but the point is, the reason the staffing numbers have declined to the point where this service is not sustainable took place largely under the watch of your party.
No, to some extent the recruitment embargo was brought in, but like what we are saying in Abbeyleix, what happened in Abbeyleix is the number of patients dropped. I remember 2 years ago there were approximately 50 residents in that facility in Abbeyleix, and the numbers of patients in Abbeyleix have reduced in accordance, with the fact that nobody had been brought into Abbeyleix in the last year or more. So the number of patients have declined more than the number of staff have declined. So that argument doesn't fully hold up.
Okay, but if we compare this to Loughlow House in Athlone, again, very similar circumstances. That took place during Mary Harney's watch as well. So does the Minister have the authority to reverse this, or is it a matter for the HSE management, in this case Joe Rowan, to work within the confines of his budget?
Well, you've asked a very important question there, and it's the one that Minister Riley personally has answered. As you know, he got rid of the HSE board after he became a minister. He made them all resign, and he now has his own civil servant on the HSE board, and he has taken charge of the board of the HSE himself. They report to him. So what you were saying was the case. There was an independent HSE board last year, but James Riley, maybe for his own good reasons, has decided that he wanted to take a hands-on approach. And fine if he wants to do that. I don't argue with that. That's his prerogative. But then if he makes a decision like this, he must come up out front and attend a meeting in Abbeyleix next week and explain that.
Okay, but presumably as well, Deputy Fleming, if he is to maintain the staff level at Abbeyleix that is necessary to keep the facility open, he's going to have to draw from somewhere else. Where should that be?
No, you missed the other key point. I said the number of residents in Abbeyleix have reduced from over 50 down to under 30, reduced by approximately 20 in the last 2 years.
Yes, but when the HICWA report was conducted in February, the numbers are more or less as they are today, and HICWA found at that time that the unit was insufficiently staffed.
Well, during the course of the summer, I actually personally had a parliamentary question to the Minister on this matter in recent times, and there was no HICWA issue. He just said he's reviewing the provision of care for elderly people was the only issue in relation to Abbeyleix as part of a nationwide review of. So really the Minister is hinting this could happen in other areas as well throughout the county or throughout the region, because he's saying this is part of an overall national review of care for the elderly, and it's not brought about anything got to do with HICWA. And I had a parliamentary question answered to that effect only quite recently by the Minister himself personally.
At what time today will you be tabling your question?
Well, I have it already gone in, and it's due to be taken about 1 o'clock. That's if the County Court agrees to allow me to raise that. I've put in a written request last night, and I'll ask him again this morning, and I hope I will be allowed raise that and get the Minister to answer it. If I don't get it today, I'll make sure I get an answer by next Tuesday, end it all.
Deputy Sean Fleming, thank you very much for taking our call this morning.
Thank you.
Now, as I said, still to come, we will be hearing from Joe Rowan. He is the area manager with the HSE, and he'll explain why the organisation has taken this decision. You're also going to meet some more people who are affected by the consequences of this. Mary is in Stradbally. Morning, Mary.
Morning, Will.
Tell us your story.
We happened to be there yesterday evening visiting my mother when news filtered around the hospital, and it was so sad to see your 92-year-old mother crying.
How long has your mum been there?
4 years this month.
And she considers that to be her home, her sanctuary, her place where she's safe.
She thinks as much of the staff in Abbeyleix as she does of her own family.
And was she crying for long?
Well, we sort of consoled her, and the father, Ahern, I think, from Abbeyleix, he came in and sort of lifted her, but crying and laughing at the same time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, not knowing what to make of it.
Not knowing, and her friend as well, and she's 94, and she was in bits.
And I take it the general mood among residents there was one of upset and shock.
Yeah, very, very.
And do you understand the reasons for the decision, or does it make any sense to you at all?
I could see lately like that it had staff had got smaller in it and that, but other than that, no.
Staff had got smaller? Was the care and attention that patients were receiving affected?
No, that was the same.
And did you have any complaints ever over the 4 years that your mum has been there?
Never. Because my father is dead 21 years, and he also was in Abbeyleix that length, so we have that dealings with Abbeyleix that length. And
how would you describe the quality of care?
Very good. Never had any complaints. You could always go in any time or ring up, and mother never complained about them.
Did you get the sense that because the staff numbers were getting smaller, that the individual staff members were under more pressure?
They probably were, but I never heard them complain, and they were always in good humour. But my mother was able to sort of look after herself to a certain point, so probably she never complained anyhow, never.
Now, the decision to close will be on a phased basis, so it's not like the doors are going to close tomorrow, and they may not. I mean, people are going to oppose this and there will be local opposition. But has anybody from the HSE sat down with you yet and said, this is when your mum will have to leave, these are the arrangements we're going to make?
No, not a word. We knew nothing until I went in yesterday evening and I met my brother in there. He was coming out the door and he said, it's closing. So I went down to her then, and she was crying in the room, so she was in her bedroom at that time.
Very
and
tough
she said, what am I going to do for my whist drives of a Sunday night?
And what other activities would she be involved in apart from the whist on the Sunday?
Well, she goes down to the day room every day there, I'd say, and she does her patchwork and all that type of thing. Her mind is very good for 92.
Well, the HSE is at pains to point out that daycare services will remain. So those activities will still be there, but ultimately, as a place to live, those days are numbered.
Yeah.
Mary, thanks for the call.
Okay, that's grand, Will. Thank you.
Jim is in Abbeyleix. Morning, Jim.
Good morning, Will. Thank you for having me.
Again, you've a strong family connection to the facility?
Yes, I have a son that works in it at present, and he'd be the third generation. My father and mother worked in it, I worked in it, and now he's working in it. And personally, it is one of the best run hospitals in the Midlands. If, God forbid, I was to want nursing in the morning, I'd go to...
That's where you'd go.
I'd go to Abbeyleix before I'd go to any nursing home.
Jim, can you paint a picture for us? Because it would be difficult for anybody to imagine what the facility is like if they have never been there. So bring us through the doors and describe what the feeling is like.
Well, I tell you now, when I heard it yesterday, I was aghast, I have to say it. It was something that was rumoured, but we never thought would actually happen. I mean, it's the last place of employment in Abbeyleix. Once that goes, Abbeyleix is gone. And it catered for patients from the Carlow border, Kilkenny border, Tipperary border, Offaly border. It had patients from all over Laois, and they were catered for and looked after out of the mint.
And what was the source of the rumours you talked about there, that there was some uncertainty? Was it because staff numbers were getting smaller?
The staff numbers were getting smaller, and there was a general consensus that it was going to be downgraded or whatever. But yesterday I heard a rumour, and I phoned my local councillor, who didn't know at the time, would say this is at 2 o'clock, but he phoned me back at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and he said, yes, Deputy Fleming has been informed that it's closing. And I tell you, the town is numb.
Well, I compared this to Loughlow House in Athlone, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with what happened there, but again, it was a nursing facility which was closed. A HICWA report was cited as the reason it had to close and so on and so forth, but there was massive local opposition. Thousands of people took to the streets, and ultimately it came to nothing because the HSE proceeded with its plans anyway. But would you imagine there will be the same level of resistance and anger in Abbeyleix as we saw in Athlone a little over a year ago?
Oh God, I would certainly, and I tell you what I would do now, that Brian Maher was on there earlier and he was talking of a public meeting. I would call on people that had relatives in it and have relatives in it to come out and support that meeting. I mean, it's there for everyone in Laois. And as I say, the catering they get for there is superb, from nursing staff, matron nurses, the lay staff. It's perfect, and there will be massive protest to this now.
I don't want to preempt whatever the HSE will say later when Joe Ruane joins us, but I would imagine he will argue that patients are not going to be turfed out onto the street, that private facilities will be found for them, they will be looked after. What do you say in response to that?
They may be looked after, but I mean, this is their environment for, as the previous caller said, her mother is there for a year. This is their home from home type of thing, and they've got to know the staff and the whole lot. And you ask any patient that's in it, they're as happy as Larry in it. And I mean, why take them out of that environment at that age of their life and throw them into a new environment that it's going to take them months, years to adjust to?
Jim, thank you so much for the call.
Thank you very much, Will. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Not at all. 0818 300 103 is our telephone number if you'd like to share your own views on that particular issue as well. I just want to read a quick note from the HICWA report, which was carried out at Abbeyleix Community Nursing Unit earlier this year. And in it, the inspectors interviewed a number of residents, some relatives, staff, and so on. And here are some quotes which I think really sum up how residents feel about it. One said, "I feel very well cared for. The staff are great." Another resident complimented management and staff on the wide range of activities that were available to patients, adding that she plays bingo, cards, and does a lot of patchwork, and she also likes to go to the oratory. A resident commented on the homeliness of the centre, stating in her questionnaire that as I am unable to live at home and depend on people to do everything for me, I now see this as my home and I am very, very happy here. A relative commented, because this centre is known as a centre of excellence where patients are treated with respect, the care and attention to detail surpass previous homes and centres that I have visited. So that's a selection of feedback that HICWA inspectors received when they visited the home as recently as February. There were some issues that they highlighted, and the HSE as recently as a month ago indicated those issues had been dealt with for the most part. We're discussing the decision of the HSE to close Abbeyleix Community Nursing Unit on a phased basis. And so far you've heard from locals who argue that it is a pivotal part of the local community, very important, a home for 28 people, and Deputy Sean Fleming contends the decision to close it is in fact a false economy. We'll be dealing with that later when Joe Ruane, the area manager for the HSE, joins us. But also, since the state is genuinely strapped for cash, on the same day you're hearing about the closure of Abbeyleix Community Nursing Unit, you will read in your papers that this country is paying to fund cosmetic surgery for convicted criminals. We also handed €700 million over to unsecured bondholders yesterday. So all of that is still to come, in addition to developments with a new Offaly football boss, how to turn a good business idea into €10,000 in cash, plus our movie and wine review as well. But first, Jim is in Abbeyleix. Morning, Jim.
Good morning, Will. How are you?
Very well, thank you. You've been listening to the discussion so far.
I have, yes.
So what would you like to add to it?
Yeah, just I have a minute to spare. I just pulled in here. I'm repping. So, no, I think it's a terrible decision if it goes ahead. I think it's the time for the people of Abbeyleix now to stand up on this one. I have an aunt in there for almost 3 years, and it's her home. And apart from the fact of moving people out and inconvenience them and knocking them about, it's got to do with visiting as well. We don't know where we'll be going to visit our relations now, as in from whenever this change comes in. I call in there nearly every night to see her, because I'm living in Abbeyleix. But for people who have to travel a good distance now, that's going to make it very, very awkward on those as well. And they look forward to seeing their families around them, but it will probably end up cutting visiting during the week now for people as well.
And I'm not very familiar with what other facilities would be close by, but are there many other options?
I suppose Ballyraggett and Stradbally have been mentioned. That's all I've heard at this stage now. But, personally, Abbeyleix has been fantastic, and my aunt is very, very happy there. She was in a different nursing home, and when she got to actually move into Abbeyleix, the change in her was unbelievable as well, because she's a stroke victim,
So the change was in that she was more positive, or they helped her in a physical way?
Much more at home, and it's her home, as the previous caller said, and that is a fact. And for people know that they see that they class it as their home now.
How did she react to the news yesterday?
Well, she didn't say too much. A little bit quieter last night. It probably hasn't really sunk in at this stage,
And that would be the concern. If people start mulling things over and brooding on them, it can have a very detrimental effect of somebody of that age.
Agreed. Yeah. It's not on now, to be quite honest. As you said previously about the bondholders, 750 million. I think we have to have a bit of reality check and look after our own first.
All right, Jim, thanks for the call.
No problem at all, Will. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's head to Portlaoise. Sheila, good morning.
Good morning, Will.
Again, you've more connections to Abbeyleix.
I have indeed. I have an uncle over there for the past 10 years. And he's been very, very well looked after.
And he's happy, and it's his home, and he's content, and you've no complaints?
I have no complaints whatsoever. My uncle was over here in Portlaoise for a couple of nights. And when he went back to Abbeyleix, he says that he was so glad to be back, that he was home again.
So his time in Portlaoise just wasn't the same. He felt very much attached to Abbeyleix.
He does, Will, and he's very, very happy there. And he has been in Abbeyleix for the past 10 years.
And what age is your uncle?
My uncle was 89 a fortnight ago.
So after 10 years, he's very settled, and at 89, he's not going to want to move.
He is not, and if my uncle gets upset, the nurses ring and they get me to talk to him, and he settles back down, and they are so good to him. The matron and all the staff are so good, Will. It's just... We got a bolt out of the blue yesterday, and we're still not recovered.
A few people have talked about there being hints and rumours, and that the writing was on the wall when the number of staff declined in recent years. Were you aware of any of that?
Well, we did hear when we went over up and down that maybe that was going to close and things like that, but I would never have believed it, because any time I went over, me and my sister went over, we were always very welcome there, and the place was always the same, and there was never any, never anything changed. We were made so welcome, and we could go in any hour of the day or night, and it was still the same.
Again, I'm not going to preempt whatever Joe Rowan, the HSE manager, will say about this, but looking at the observations of HICWA, who inspected the facility in February, they were generally happy enough. They did have some concerns. They noted that perhaps staff didn't have enough time to interact with patients as they might like to because they were so busy. Would that be a fair observation?
Well, Will, any time I ever went over there, the staff were always there. When Jack got upset, they would ring and tell us, and we would go over. For instance, Jack was very sick there a couple of months ago. We were sent for, and we went over, and he was transferred here to Portlaoise because he has a kidney problem, and he also has dementia. And they made sure that Jack was brought over to Portlaoise, got checked out, and brought back again. I've never, ever seen that it was just below its value or anything.
All right, Sheila, thanks for taking our call this morning. Good talking to you.
Take care.
Let's go to Julianne, because Julianne, you can add an insight here that we haven't had so far. You worked there for 20 years.
Good morning, Will. Am I through to you?
You are indeed. Good morning, Julianne.
Yeah, Gillian is my name.
Oh, Gillian, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, yes, I did work there for 28 years. And what I wanted to point out was Abbeyleix Community Unit was a 52-bedded unit at one stage. And to comply with HICWA standards, we had to reduce to 42. Now, over the last year, anyone that died was not replaced. And it's now down to a 28-bedded unit. But it really is 42-bedded. So this was well planned ahead. This is no bolt out of the blue from the HSE.
So just give me a rough idea of the dates again. When would it have been at full capacity?
I would have been at full capacity, I would imagine now, about a year and a half ago we would have had 42.
Right. So progressively since then, the numbers have fallen.
Yes. Well, the reason they weren't replaced, we weren't allowed to take on admissions. No admissions came into the hospital.
Was there ever a reason given for that?
Well, as I've retired now, but I could say there wasn't. I'm sure there was in the top, but never really down to us.
It didn't filter down to you?
No.
And the staff numbers at the time, how did staffing change over that 18-month period?
I don't think they really changed. You know, we had maybe agency were let go and things like that, but we had the same amount of staff.
But Gillian, presumably when you yourself retired, were you replaced?
Well, no. Anyone retired certainly wasn't replaced.
And were you the only person to retire, or did other people leave?
Others left, yes. There was one or two others that did leave, yeah.
So you're looking at maybe 3 to 4 members of staff who would have been working there 18 months ago to look after 42 people. They're not there anymore, but there's only 28 people to look after.
Yes.
So the ratio of staff to patients probably hasn't changed that much.
No, not at all now that you're down to 28 patients.
So is there any reason then that stands up in your mind to justify this closure? Not
one thing. It's absolutely a centre of excellence. And if you read the 2 HICWA reports, they're very good. But and a lot of money was pumped into Abbeyleix. And I think those who are at the top should have made the decision a long time ago and not let expenditure take place. You know, and really they should have kept it open.
All right, Gillian, we'll be putting some of those points to Joe Rowan, the HSE area manager, when he joins us a little bit later. Thanks so much for the call.